Thank you for coming back to my video. Hope you enjoy it. After the stormy days, Jack officially started building a new home for Tien, not just a house, but a symbol of love, revival and hope. Every pickaxe, every brick contained love and the desire for a peaceful future after the loss. The journey of rebuilding from the ruins began here. After the fierce storm, Tien's house was just a gray skeleton, leaning against the muddy ground. The wooden walls were blown away by the wind. The corrugated iron roof was overturned, and nails were stuck to the broken beams. The scene made anyone passing by sigh with regret. But that morning, Jack appeared. Without saying a word, he brought a small hammer, gloves, and started the job, dismantling the house that had once been Tien's most beloved home. In just a few hours, Jack's figure was covered in dust and sweat. He pulled out each remaining nail on the doorframe, gently removing each rotten board as if afraid of hurting the memories hidden deep inside. Every time he lifted something, he paused for a few seconds, as if recalling the things that had happened there, the family photo blurred by water, the old shirt Tien used to wear while cooking, or the book still open on the table. Nothing was meaningless. For Jack, each item carried a part of the old house's soul, and he wanted them to go respectfully, without being jostled or rushed. Seeing that, the villagers started to come to help. Without being called, they brought shovels, hoes, hammers. Some removed the roof tiles, some dismantled the walls, some carried tables and chairs. No one spoke much, but everyone's eyes were warm. They didn't just come to clean up a house, but came because they were touched by Jack's heart, a person who was not born here, but loved this place like his own homeland. They gathered together what was still intact, the intact photo frame, the wooden table with only a chipped corner. Everything was neatly arranged in a corner of the yard, carefully covered with a tarp to wait for Tien to return and look again. When the sun was at its zenith, the last wooden frame of the house was taken down. The empty lot now only had the dirty traces of a home that once existed. Everyone stopped, standing silently looking at that empty space, a place that once contained so much laughter, anger, and love. Jack put down the hammer, sat down on the ground, wiping the sweat running down his forehead. He said nothing, just stared straight at the empty land, where tomorrow a new house would rise. A house of hope, of beginnings, and of love that would endure through storms. The old house was torn down, not an end, but a chapter closed to open a brighter new chapter in their lives. Mrs. Sow, who had fallen ill after the Great Flood, was now healthier. Her face rosy, her bright smile evident when she saw Tien enter. "Oh my God, it's been so long since this little girl visited me. I thought she was so busy that she forgot me," Mrs. Sow said with a laugh, reaching out to take the basket of oranges. Tien laughed, sat down next to the old bamboo bed, and stroked her loose hair. "Are you completely well now, Grandma? Your skin is so rosy." "Yes, I am well, thank God. With the children who come and help you, you can live for a few more seasons. By the way," Mrs. Sow lowered her voice, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, "how are you and Jack? Have you thought about it? I heard he proposed to you, right?" Tien suddenly hesitated. She pursed her lips, then smiled gently. "Yes, he has proposed several times, ma'am, but I still have too many worries. House, old stories, many things that are not settled, so I don't dare to accept." Mrs. Sow was silent for a few seconds. Her old eyes flashed with silence. Then she slowly said, "Yes, I understand. A girl's life also has many thoughts. But a man who, in the midst of adversity, still does not leave you for a second, still dares to rebuild the house from the ashes, is worth trusting." My child. Tien lowered her head. Her eyes filled with tears. She remembered the times Jack silently pulled out each nail, carried each broken brick, remembered the look in his eyes when he held the old photo she thought was lost. Remembered the way he held her hand tightly when she almost collapsed. She nodded slightly, her voice as light as a breeze. I know. Ma'am. He is a good person, very good. Mrs. Sao smiled softly, her hand patting Tien's hand like a silent squeeze. The small house was strangely quiet at that time, with only the rustling of leaves on the porch, like the gentle whispers of time passing by. Love sometimes does not need to be rushed, it just needs to be deep enough, true enough, and then it will bloom. After returning from the farm, Jack took a shower and went to the living room to talk to his mother. Jack sat on his familiar wooden chair, holding a cup of warm tea, his eyes looking far away towards the low hillside where the silhouettes of mango and jackfruit trees that his father had planted were faintly visible. Next to him was his mother, the woman who had sacrificed her whole life to raise him. Her eyes gentle, always understanding her son's every worry. Mom, Jack began, his voice slow but decisive. I'm thinking, I want to rebuild the farm for Tien, not just to recover from the storm, but to create a truly peaceful, truly sustainable place for our future. Jack's mother looked at him for a moment, then smiled lightly, her wrinkled hand placed on his, squeezing gently. When you say, we, do you mean you and Tien? She asked, her voice small but full of love. Jack nodded. Yes, even though Tien hasn't accepted me, I know she's still there, still worried, still loves this hometown like I do. She's lost a lot, sacrificed a lot. I want to create a real home for her, a place without worries, without brokenness. And the farm is also the place we both dreamed of. Now I want to make it come true. Jack's mother was silent for a few seconds, her eyes shining with pride and emotion. Jack, I always knew you were a person who lived with integrity, never doing anything superficial. You chose Tien. I believe you chose right. I'm old, I can't help much, but I support all your decisions with all my heart. That farm, if it's for love, it will surely grow from all your heart. Hearing those words, Jack felt his chest lighten a lot. He smiled, gently squeezed his mother's hand, as if to express his unspoken thanks. He looked up at the sky that had begun to turn purple, the sunset dyeing the distant hills. Mom, please excuse me, I'm going to pick up Tien now. I want her to see with her own eyes the land where we'll start over, not just a farm, but a new life. She nodded, her warm eyes following her son as he stood up and walked quickly to the gate. The afternoon wind blew gently. The smell of the earth after the rain was pungent but familiar. And in that moment, the old mother knew, a new chapter in her son's life was beginning. With love, with hope, and with a home that would soon be formed from the simplest things. Jack carried a small cloth bag. Inside were some cakes, a box of milk and some gifts from the countryside that he had prepared himself, and entered Mrs. Sao's yard. The bamboo gate creaked open. Mrs. Sao was sitting leisurely chewing betel on a bamboo bed. She raised her head and smiled gently when she saw Jack. Oh my God, is it Jack? Are you visiting Grandma? She asked, her voice filled with joy. Jack bowed, put the gift bag on the table. Yes, I have a little gift for Grandma. I stopped by to visit and then conveniently took Tien back to the farm. Mrs. Sao waved her hand. Oh my God, you're too polite. Come sit down and have a drink with Grandma. Jack poured her a cup of green tea, then sat next to her, gently wiping the sweat from her forehead. He looked at her, his eyes full of concern. How is Grandma Tam these days? I heard she's been tired for the past few days? Mrs. Sao nodded. Yes. Mrs. Tam is also weak. Her left leg is limping all the time. But these days she is stronger. Her temperament is still the same. She likes to scold the children. She smiled gently. But hearing you ask, she must be very happy. At that moment, Tien stepped out, her hands still covered in chalk dust after cleaning Mrs. Sao's room. Jack stood up, nodded to her and then turned to her. Grandma, I would like to take Tien back to the farm. We plan to clean it up and start planting some trees before the rainy season. Mrs. Sao hurriedly stood up. walked to the corner of the house to get some grapefruits she had picked this morning. Put them in a mesh bag and stuffed them into Tien's hand. Bring them along to eat on the way. Grapefruits from my garden, sour and sweet, very delicious. The two young people thanked Mrs. Sao profusely, bowed to Mrs. Sao and then walked out into the yard. The cool afternoon wind blew. The village road appeared peaceful under the late afternoon sunlight. The car slowly rolled, carrying two people and a new dream that was gradually being nurtured in the land called Love Farm. The car stopped at the beginning of the dirt road leading to the farm. Jack and Tien stepped out, the afternoon wind blowing gently, carrying the sweet scent of wild grass. Before their eyes was the land that used to be a place for farming and raising livestock. Now only faint traces remained after the flash floods. The soil furrows sank. The crooked wooden stakes lay among the overgrown grass. Tien stood still for a moment, her eyes looking over the vast land, looking sad and confused. But Jack was different. His eyes lit up as if he saw a new future waiting to be built from this very place. This place is too low, Jack said, pointing to the old house foundation. The foundation was low before, so when the water overflowed, it would flood the bed. This time we have to build the foundation higher, at least half a meter. It takes a little more work, but it is much safer. I don't want everything to collapse because of another storm. Tien nodded, feeling warm inside because of Jack's thoughtfulness. She turned to look at him, but before she could say anything, Jack gently held her hand, his eyes gentle but determined. Tien, I want to protect you. Jack's voice was low but full of emotion. I don't want you to suffer any more hardships. Even if it's just a sleepless night because of the rain, or a time cleaning up a flooded house, everything you've been through is enough. From now on, let me take care of it. Tien looked at him, her throat choked. The golden afternoon light shone on his face, making his words even more sincere and passionate. In that moment, she no longer saw the ruins around her, only saw in front of her a man using his whole heart to rebuild not only a roof, but also faith, hope for her and for the future ahead.
Sáng hôm sau khi mặt trời còn chưa lên cao, Jack đã đội nón, khoác áo bảo hộ rồi dắt xe máy chạy ra phía cuối làng. Một con đê ven sông đang được tu sửa sau cơn lũ lớn vừa qua. Con đường dẫn ra bờ đê vẫn còn vương sình đất. Hai bên là ruộng đồng đang hồi sinh, lúa non xanh mướt vừa kịp bén rễ lại sau bao nhiêu ngày ngập nước. Tiếng chim ríu rít trên màn tre. Vừa tới nơi anh đã thấy một tốp 5-6 người đang lúi húi đổ bê tông, kè những ngọn nắng còn đang sờ màu hôi nhễ nhại, nhưng ai cũng hăng say, chẳng ai than thở nửa lời. Quá tịnh thật chính lâu năm trong làng thấy Jack liền vỗ tay. Jack tới đúng lúc quá, tụi tôi đang tính làm thêm mấy đoạn nữa kéo dài sang cánh đồng bên kia, chỗ đó yếu lắm bữa trước suýt vỡ. Jack gật đầu tiến lại gần.